Hey, everybody. Good evening. I am Hawk. Welcome back to my page. I'm recording this Thursday, April 24th, about 9:30 p.m. I read a really great article today that I wanted to take you guys through. It's written by a guy named Radley Balko, Radleybalko. He has a Substack. He's a journalist, author, blogger who speaks and writes about criminal justice, the drug war, civil liberties, those types of things. He used to work for the Washington Post, where he had been an opinion columnist for 9 years. He's written several books, including a really good one called The Rise of the Warrior Cop. I came across an article on his Substack today that was just, it's such a good real world kind of description of what we're dealing with right now as individuals, like as individuals who still want to be like positive members of our community, and still want to be like decent neighbors and friends. um, and that's on his Substack. You can just search Radley Balko Substack. He puts stuff up almost every day. The title of this article is called "The Courage to Be Decent." And the subtitle of it is "The Trump administration wants to make us too afraid to look out for one another. Don't let them." And these first couple sentences, it's a really, really good opening. One of the more pernicious effects of authoritarianism is to make the everyday participation in civic life we take for granted feel subversive. The goal isn't to police all behavior at all times. It's to make us fearful to the point that we police our own behavior, that we start having doubts and fears, and we start being afraid. And I was like, yeah. So then he goes on to tell this story about an attorney in Texas who, well, I'll just read a couple things for you. Last month, a guy named Klay Jackson, the attorney, was at a gas station up the street from his home in a Dallas suburb when one of the attendants asked if he might provide some legal advice to an immigrant family. Um, and the guy had heard that Klay, did some pro bono work for some other people. And he said there was a family in the area where the dad had been caught up in one of the ICE workplace raids. And the family was really kind of freaking out. The parents were undocumented, while one of the kids is DACA and the other kid that they had is a U.S. citizen. The man asked Jackson if he would be willing to just talk to them to make sure that they know their rights, and where they could get some help. And, Mr. Jackson's like, absolutely. I'm not an immigration attorney, but they were scared to reach out to anyone. So I said I'd go over and talk to them, and just give them some basic information about their rights. Later that afternoon, on March 4th, Klay Jackson visited their home. He said it was a little difficult to communicate. Both sides were translating through a 10-year-old, their 10-year-old daughter. He met with them for less than an hour, told them their rights if they're detained by ICE. He said he would help them find pro bono counsel who specialized in immigration. 2 days later, on March 6th, Attorney Jackson was working at his home around 11:30 a.m. when he got a notice that his internet had gone down. He didn't think much of it. It can cut out from time to time. About 10 minutes after his internet went down, there was a knock at his front door. Two men were outside Jackson's door. Each were dressed in slacks and polos, and they were not wearing badges. He first thought they were trying to tell him something, and one of the men then said, "Are you Clayton Jackson?" And he's like, "Yeah. We have information that you are obstructing an ongoing immigration investigation." Jackson said alarms went off in his head. His first instinct was want to know what this was about. He tried to tell them that it was a misunderstanding, and started to tell them how he's been involved in some pro bono work. He said, then a voice inside my head kicked in and just said, "You need to shut the fuck up and don't say anything." And that's the right voice. uh, and The officers never identified themselves. They did ask if they could come inside. He said, absolutely not. I asked them for their names and badge numbers. They said, we don't have to provide that information for you. And then he's like, I'm calling my lawyer, and shut the door. But that started his mind racing. He's like, I needed to know who they were, what agency they were with. Then he remembered he had a Ring camera. Maybe he could watch the video of the incident and figure out who they were from that. There was no video. And he said, that's when I learned why my VPN had gone down, why my internet had gone down. Someone had shut off his Wi-Fi. 15 minutes after the two officers left his door, his internet came back on. That's illegal. That's like explicitly illegal to do. So there was around a 30-minute period where his Wi-Fi was down, and it happened to be the period where these officers came to his door, which prevented his Ring camera from recording them. Jackson contacted his internet carrier. They were of no help, put it that way. He said, I have a buddy who's former federal law enforcement and is now an attorney. So I called him and asked him if federal agencies have the technological capability to shut off someone's Wi-Fi without them knowing about it, and if that's something that they do. And his friend said, hell yes. He said they do it all the time when they want to have an informal interview with someone and they don't want to be recorded. People he spoke to who have expertise in these matters said, A, it would not be difficult to shut off someone's Wi-Fi, and B, doing so without a court order is absolutely fucking illegal. And he's like, shit, man, now I'm going to have to tell my employer. I'm going to have to retain my own attorney. Now I have to worry about my own clients. If they're investigating me, are they going to start looking into his clients as well? As he thought about the incident, Jackson couldn't help but put it in the context of Trump administration's mass deportation efforts, as well as its ongoing campaign to intimidate the legal profession. Yeah. He said, I'm anti-MAGA and I'm worried about where this country is headed, but I'm pretty low-key. I'm not the type to, say, chain myself to a Tesla dealership. This is a very conservative area, but there's a large and growing Latino population. He wanted to do some pro bono work outside the scope of his day-to-day job, so he agreed to help out the family that owned the barbecue place. But if it's happened to me, I guarantee you it's happened to other attorneys. So I wanted to... He reached out. Klay Jackson reached out to Radley Balko based on some of Radley Balko's other work. He reached out to him to tell him this story, basically. So I wanted to reach out to you to get the word out and see how often this is happening, because it needs to stop. The author reached out to several law enforcement agencies. None of them returned his request for a comment. Intimidating lawyers has been a key component of the Trump administration's overall strategy, and this is especially true with respect to mass deportations. Immigrants detained for lacking documentation are more than 10 times likely to get a favorable outcome if they have an attorney than if they don't. So broaden the scope of what we're talking about here for a minute. And think about all of the law firms that Trump has targeted with executive orders who have capitulated and who have worked out these little deals where they, some of the largest, most respected law firms in the United States, instead of providing pro bono legal assistance to immigrants facing deportation, these law firms are now committed to provide over $1 billion worth of pro bono legal work to Donald Trump. How fucked up is that? Trump officials were certainly aware of that last stat of how better they do with attorneys when they don't. During Trump's first term, Attorney General Jeff Sessions decried, quote, dirty immigration lawyers, claiming they were encouraging their clients to make false claims of asylum, providing them with the magic words needed to get relief. There were also multiple incidents of DHS targeting immigration attorneys, advocates, and journalists with criminal investigations, or by flagging their passports for extra scrutiny if they left and re-entered the country. That was during Trump's first term. But this time around, they're ratcheting up the pressure. Last month, Trump issued an executive order claiming without evidence that immigration attorneys commonly coach clients to conceal their past or lie about their circumstances while asserting their asylum claims, and that this practice undermines the integrity of our immigration laws and the legal profession more broadly, to say nothing of the undeniable tragic consequences of the resulting mass illegal immigration. Before mentioning the names, the order directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate and seek possible sanctions against immigration attorneys. There have now been at least 2 incidents in which Customs and Border Patrol have detained immigration attorneys at the border, demanding to see their phones. One was held for several hours. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. I have my cell phone. It's a personal cell phone, but I use it for work. And I also have a work laptop computer. In both of those devices, there's an unimaginable amount of information about my clients who I represent and my communications with them, whether it be in text messages, voicemails, or emails. And so attorney-client privilege, within the context of criminal or civil litigation, the other side, whether it's the prosecution or in my case, civil defense attorneys, my communications with my client in whatever form are absolutely privileged. They are not discoverable by the other side, by prosecutors, by law enforcement, if it's a criminal case. That privilege is held by the client. It is not held by me. And so if I get detained at a border, say I go to Mexico for vacation or something and I'm coming back into the States. If I get detained and I have my cell phone on me and Customs and Border Patrol says, no, everything's fine, you're fine, we just need you to open your phone for us and let us look at your phone. I don't have a choice but to say no. It's not my decision to waive attorney-client privilege over the information that's in my phone. That's my client's decision. If I were to open my phone and hand it to a third party, that would destroy the privilege, that would destroy attorney-client privilege. Because, and I say this, I've said this to clients many, many times. It's like, I have an initial meeting with a client and they want to bring a spouse or they want to bring a friend or something like that. And I'm like, if a third person is in the room, then that entire communication is not privileged anymore. You have waived your privilege to that communication because there's someone in the room who is not the attorney or the client. And if I were in that situation at the border and I opened up my phone and handed it to federal law enforcement, I could very reasonably expect to get disbarred or at least severely disciplined and probably suspended for a period of time. Because these guys at the border, they don't have warrants. They're just yanking people out of line and saying, open your phone. And so again, it wouldn't be my choice. It's my client's choice. And my client's obviously not there, any of them. And so one of the many reasons why I will not be traveling outside the United States while this rancid, corpulent protuberance of a human being occupies the Oval Office. Some more examples. One of the first prestigious law firms that Trump targeted with an executive order is a firm called Paul Weiss. And he first targeted them because they employed one of the Robert Mueller special prosecutors years earlier. But after Trump announced an agreement with the firm removed immigration-related cases from the pro bono section of its website. They also shut down other DEI programs. In multiple recent interviews, Trump immigration czar Tom Homan has repeatedly threatened Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with criminal prosecution for handing out Know Your Rights information to her immigrant constituents and streaming similar webinars on social media. There's absolutely nothing illegal about that. This administration has barred organizations from conducting Know Your Rights legal orientation programs in federal courthouses. In a deranged Newsmax interview earlier this month, Trump terrorism advisor Sebastian Gorka, that's how he talks, declared that people merely advocating for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from an El Salvadoran prison are advocating for a terrorist and could be charged with federal crimes against aiding and abetting terrorism. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. But again, go back to those first three sentences. One of the more pernicious effects of authoritarianism is to make the everyday participation in civic life we take for granted feel subversive. The goal isn't to police all behavior at all times. It's to make us fearful to the point that we police our own behavior. And so you've got the terrorism advisor, Trump's counterterrorism chief, saying that if you support the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that you are aiding and abetting terrorism. And it's like, we sit here and it's like, that's ridiculous. But look who the attorney general is, Pam Bondi. You think she wouldn't arrest somebody for voicing their support for Kilmar Abrego Garcia? I wouldn't take that bet. And it's like, the goal here is to harass and intimidate and incapacitate anyone with power, money, or a platform that could thwart Trump's aspirations to authoritarianism. The first time the author of this article spoke with Klay Jackson, he was reeling. Klay Jackson is a white guy with a well-paying job, centrist politics, plenty of connections in the legal community. He's extremely intelligent, and he clerked for a federal judge. And yet there were multiple points in their conversation where the author felt like he needed to reassure Mr. Jackson that he had done nothing wrong. He's a lawyer. He had given some legal advice to people who needed it. That is, always has been, and always should be legal. It isn't that Jackson regrets what he did, but the visit from the two officers made him feel like he should, as if he'd brought the visit from the police on himself. And when the author reminded him of this, Mr. Jackson said, "Thank you for saying that. It's something I have to keep reminding myself. Helping people out pro bono is part of my professional obligation as a lawyer. I did nothing wrong." He then paused for a moment and said, "But can I be honest with you? I am fucking scared to be in Texas right now as a white guy with a law degree." It's just, fortunately, there are so many of the things that Trump is doing with immigration and with his executive orders against law firms and things like that that are getting shot down by the courts. And we'll see how long he continues to obey the courts. But, it doesn't matter, because it's like the things or the actions that we once took for granted as, like virtuous, routine, and safe, like an attorney doing pro bono work for people in their community, now carry some risk. And it's like they now require some level of courage, where before it was just mundane. It was normal. And it's like, maybe the government won't send you to prison for doing this stuff, at least not yet, but they can make your life incredibly difficult. What if Mr. Jackson now gets an audit notice from the IRS or some other kind of notification that he's under some other kind of investigation? And it's just, this is authoritarianism. It's harassment. It's intimidation. It's threats. It's not putting necessarily everybody in jail, but it's putting enough people in jail that everybody else polices their own behavior and keeps their head down and stays quiet. And I think that's something that we all need to guard against during this period of time. If you're still watching at 20 minutes in, I I'm glad I found that article today. I'm glad that I was able to go through that with you guys. It's important stuff. And it's stuff that doesn't get a lot of coverage. But if you enjoyed this video, please click like. Please leave a comment. Even if it's a shitty one and you don't know your difference between there, and there, that helps the rest of us spot you. Please also subscribe to my page. It's free. You can check out our merch store also at hawkmerchstore.com. And tomorrow's Friday. The weekend is here. If anybody's going out protesting this weekend, please be safe and don't give the cops a reason to arrest you. All right. See you guys soon. Have a great weekend.